Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Draft Professors Jordan and Hank, and we are going to talk about some fat guys because fat guys win championships. But before we dive into that, Hank, it's been a week since I've seen you. How you doing? How was your weekend?
Doing great. Had a nice week off in Utah. Got a lot of walking done and excited to finish on my big board and get ready for the draft.
And Jordan, I think I saw you on Friday for the mock, and now
Yeah,
you're back. Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I think I finalized up to 250 on my big board today. So yeah, I think it just in the final stretch. I think we have what 5 weeks? Is it 5 weeks, 6 weeks until the draft now?
Something like that. Yeah.
5 weeks. Yeah. So join the home run stretch.
And yeah, I've even been reflecting, right? Because we've been covering the draft since May. So I'm like, the draft is really 5 weeks away. So it's like 5 weeks, and then we're about to dive into a completely new class.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that like offensive linemen don't get talked about a lot. This podcast has done three wide receiver shows in 1 week. And this is only the fifth offensive line show we've done since December. So, Hank, who do you think will be the first offensive lineman drafted?
The first offensive lineman I think we could draft is probably going to be Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. If I had to put money on it, I think he'd be a prime candidate at 6 for sure for the Browns. Especially when we're talking about positional value in the NFL. There's a lot of pretty decent right tackles this year. Maui Noah, is he a guard though? Maybe Fano, but there's been talk of him playing center, so maybe he'll play center or guard or tackle. Who knows? But I think because Freeling is going to be a guaranteed left tackle, he's young, he's got the potential. I think that ends up getting him to be the first offensive lineman taken this year, and his ceiling would probably be 6 for me.
To the ceiling, like you don't see a team trading up ahead of the Browns to take Freeling at 5 or 4 or
I
3.
mean, they could, but I don't think that there's a team in the range to trade up for him that would be willing to give up enough to go get a left tackle. I think especially within like the next 5 picks, there's not a team that absolutely screams left tackle for me, especially trading up to get one in this class. So that's why I think that the Browns at 6 would probably be the pretty safe bet for his ceiling.
Well, Houston trading up for Freeling agenda and the Lions trading up for Freeling agenda, but that's not the subject of this podcast.
Nah, nah, nah.
Jordan, who do you think is the first offensive lineman draft?
So I think it's the same. I think it's Monroe Freeling. Now I don't have Monroe Freeling ahead of Francis Mauigoa. I think Francis Mauigoa to me is the best offensive lineman in this class. But like Hank pointed out, with Francis potentially being a guard, like some teams could view him as a guard, I think that could allow him to slip. I think he could go third overall to the Cardinals. I think it's more likely that Monroe Freeling goes 6 to the Browns, and Francis goes to maybe the Bengals, depending on the board at 10. So those are my top two. But yeah, I have Monroe Freeling going first, but Francis being the better offensive lineman.
What makes Francis Maui Noah potentially a better offensive line prospect than Monroe Freeling?
I think he has more. For me, it's more tape. He has more tape of being a dominant run blocker. I think this year proved that he's a really good pass blocker as well. I think Monroe Freeling has potentially the higher upside because of the measurements, the measurables. Like I think he's 6'7", 320 pounds. He
Like
moves much
34-inch arms.
Yeah, he's 34 plus inch arms.
Mhm.
Francis does, and I think Francis has a little over 33, which puts him on the right side of being a tackle. But Freeling's got, like Hank said, 34 plus, almost 35.
Yeah, almost
He
35.
moves really well in space. I think he's a really good athlete. He showed that at the combine, and that's where everybody started talking about him going to the Browns. When they saw him run the 40, when they saw his vertical and everything like that, that's when that noise talk was spreading. Because before the combine, all the noise I heard was the Lions, and that made sense at 18 or 17. It made sense, but now it's like the Browns can get him at 6 instead of waiting until 24, 25.
Yeah.
They have to jump on that. But for me, with Francis, I think Francis He's very aggressive in the run blocking game. He's a good pass blocker. Moves really well. He's big. Like for me, he just reminds me of a truck, an 18-wheeler, because he's just so wide and he moves so agile for that size. So that's why I have him ranked ahead. But if you're going off measurements, which the NFL tends to do, that's why I think Monroe will go higher.
Is Maui Noah, is he a better prospect for you than Freeling?
No, I think I'm banking on upside with my grade. I think if you just go off pure tape, I think definitely Mano's tape will stand out. But there's a ton to like about Freeling. He's been my OT1 for probably about 2 months now. It's just the way he moves in space, it's just different, especially for his size and being the only guy in the top that's gonna go round one. Or, in the conversation, there's Fano, Manoa, there's maybe Caleb Lomu, there's other guys. They're not guaranteed to stay at tackle. This is a guy that's going to stay at tackle. I think that just gives him a premium. It's like, when we were doing corners and I was talking about Devin Moore from Florida. It's just because he has height and arm length in a class where the guys are shorter and, smaller in terms of arm length, he's probably going to go earlier, even with the injury concerns, because he just has a premium. And I think Monroe Freeling in this draft has a premium, and I think that's going to make him go earlier. And I think it makes him the better prospect. It might not make him the better overall football player, but I think in terms of being a prospect, I think Freeling is better.
Yeah.
Who's the next offensive lineman that you want to bring to everybody's attention?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a guy who I want to make sure. Yeah, top 10 on my board. A little bit of a weirder one, especially when we're talking about guards. It's not Vega Ione. It's actually Emmanuel Pregnon. I think Pregnon was a stud this year, especially if we're just going off strictly this year. He was near elite in basically every aspect of the game in Oregon. But the problem is that he had 5 years before this where he looked near UDFA level. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't going to cut in the NFL. So there are some questions about, is this him just being older than everyone else and dominating on the offensive line? Personally, I don't think so. I think he just took that step up. I think if it was a case of that, going from his 5th year to his 6th year wouldn't have been that much of a difference because he was pretty bad last season at USC. But this year at Oregon, he was just a different level of talent. He was dominant. He had a good anchor. He finished his blocks, good IQ. It's just, how high is the team going to take a guard? The consensus is Vega Ione over him, which is fine. I think Vega is sick as well. He's still really high on my board too. It's just, I think Pregnon is a better mover. I like his measurables a bit more. I like his work in the run game a bit more. And I think his ceiling is probably going to be the Chargers in the first round. But it wouldn't shock me if he ended up going really early day 2 either, just because he plays guard.
Yeah. Jordan, how about you? Who is your next favorite defensive line prospect?
So I really like Caleb Lomu out of Utah, the left tackle. I think the biggest problem that he's going to have at the next level is his power profile. And I think we've talked about this in the group chat too. He's just small. It's like he's tall, but he's small. I think he weighed in at 313 at the combine, which was a lot more than what he played at, apparently. I think he was playing in the 290s during the season, which is nuts to have a Division I left tackle play at 290, regardless of your height. That is just nuts. But he held up really well. Now, did he go up against a lot of the other power forward edge rushers that are going to get drafted? No, he didn't have a lot of tape against those guys. So that's another knock on him, but he's a great athlete. He moves his feet really well. He can get caught leaning out a little bit, but he does have good arm length. I think he was 33.5-inch arms, which is where he differs from his running mate on the right side. But he is going to be a left tackle in the NFL if he can continue to add and gain weight and stay at that weight and play at that. If he can stay at 315, 320, I think he'll be fine. I think that's just the biggest question because he did play at 295 during the season. And it's like, can you play at the 315 you showed up at the combine? And I think that's what a lot of teams are going to ask. But I do like him as a player. He progressed really well. He's young. I think he's not even 21 yet. So that's another thing why I think he has high upside. I think he's late round 1, but more realistic, probably early round 2 for me.
Who's the next offensive lineman that you like?
Yeah, I did say Lomu is I think he's my OT3. I have him ahead of Fano. I think, there's just small guys who play small, especially in terms of arm length and weight, does kind of worry me because how is he going to, when, Miles Garrett, worst case scenario, lines up across from him and he runs through his chest, how's he going to absorb that contact? I don't know, but he's a sick pass blocker and that's going to get him paid a lot of money and he should be fine. I really like him fitting in the Texans, hopefully. But the next guy that I want to bring up is I'm just going to go to his running mate, Spencer Fano, because there's a lot of questions about Fano and where he's going to play in the NFL. And the one thing you're getting with Fano is a great athlete. He's going to be able to move in space. He's going to play light. I wouldn't expect him to eclipse 310 in the NFL because I don't want him to sacrifice his movement ability because it's just kind of otherworldly the way he moves in space. It's just, can he hang as a tackle? Probably not. 32-inch arms isn't great for him. I would fully expect him, honestly, to kick inside to center. I think the idea of him at center is pretty fun. Getting him on a pull block would be really fun to see, and getting him working in space. It would be probably a bit of an adjustment period for him, but Fano at center is an idea I really do like. I think also guard would make sense. I just can't see tackle with the weight he plays at, with his arm length, with his anchor that's already pretty not great. It's another situation where you get a Miles Garrett across from him and he runs through his chest. What's he going to do? He can't anchor it. He can barely anchor in college. So he's got to get some, he's got to kick inside. Will it be center? I hope so. I think it'd be just fun to see him play center. But this is a guy who's going to come in, play on your interior of the offensive line, and more than likely be a plus starter from day one. So he's a guy that I think will go round one, draft day, maybe probably back end because teams are going to want to kick him inside. But I personally have a round two grade on him. But I think more than likely this is a back end of round one, maybe mid round one kind of player.
What kind of team would draft Fano? And what I mean by that is if a team, like the way that I understand the description, Hank, is that if a team needs a tackle or a guard, then Fano would be on their board. But if a team only needs a tackle, do you think they would pass Fano over for a lesser prospect if they had their interior shored up?
Yeah, I really do think so. I just think there's no way. I don't even know, of course, there's not no way. I think it's very unlikely Fano sticks on the outside in the NFL. I think it's just unrealistic to ask a guy who's sub 310 with short arms and small hands to play right tackle in the NFL. I think that more than likely he plays guard. Would love him at center, but there's no reason for a team that needs a tackle to bank on a guy who barely has the measurables to play tackle. Would they go for a lesser prospect? Probably. Like if you're at the back end of round one and you have a guy like, if you really like Blake Miller, some people really love Blake Miller. And if you really like Blake Miller to play right tackle instead, you might go with him because he has the NFL length, he has the NFL measurables. So it might just end up being like the case where his measurables just make him fall in the draft, and it wouldn't shock me.
Jordan, how about you? When you look at the landing places for Spencer Fano, like if the Ravens don't pick Fano because they need help throughout the offensive line,
Yeah.
we could see Fano drop a little bit in the draft, right?
Yeah, I think for me, I think his ceiling's probably 22 for the Chargers if Vega's gone. If Vega's gone and they value Fano more than Pregnon, which some people can, then they could take him at 22. But then at the same time, you could see him fall to someone like the Patriots at 31, and I wouldn't be shocked, honestly.
Who's your next favorite offensive lineman?
So I'm a big Max Ionacher fan. And I've had discussions with people about him. Where do you rank him? Is he top 50? Is he, second round, third round? For me, I have a second round grade on him. I think he probably goes in the early 40s. I think he's a great athlete. He's very raw. And that's really the hiccup and the hang up on him. I think he's been playing football for like 3 years out of JUCO. So he has a basketball background, 6'6", 320, amazing athlete. And you can see it in his footwork that he has some basketball background in him because he's able to move his feet really well and mirror guys in regards to the pass rush. And you saw that at the Senior Bowl. You saw it against Texas Tech, who had one of the best defensive line pass rushing groups in the nation this year. So he really held his own. And I think that's when people started giving him that, early day two talks, like he could be this guy if he continues to develop. And I think with him only having 3 to 4 years of football prowess behind him and to be already established the way he is. I'm not saying he's an elite prospect by any means, but for me, for somebody that's playing, year 4 and going in and stonewalling David Bailey, and then the next one you got a speed rush from Romello Height and you're able to push him on the ground, I think that's pretty impressive. So for me, like, I'm banking on the traits similar to Hank with Monroe Freeling, 34-inch arms. I'm banking on that with his athleticism and putting in the right system. I think if he's with the right offensive line coach, he could be a day one starter. And I think you have somebody that can anchor your right tackle position for years to come.
Do you see a world where Max gets out of round 1?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I think him going round 1 would honestly be a bit of a surprise. I think if he was younger, he would go round 1 for sure, especially with the 5th year option. But I mean, this is a guy who's going to be almost 25 when the season starts. I'm pretty sure, according to I don't know how legitimate that is. It's been a huge conversation recently. Personally, I don't care how old he is. If he's going to play really well, we know he's only been playing football for 3-4 seasons, so he's got plenty of time to still develop. It's another situation though where you're taking an older guy and how many contracts are you going to get out of him? Realistically, 1.5 probably. This is just I think Max is probably going to end up being a very good tackle in the NFL. I think he's going to be just fine. He's able to play at a very high level against some of the best players in the country. He just needs more work. He needs more time. Teams got to be patient with him. Everyone talks about sending someone to the Eagles. This would be the guy that I want to go to the Eagles. Sit behind Lane Johnson for a year, learn the game a bit, and then Lane Johnson retires, you have your starting right tackle of the future. So the Eagles, I want to say they have their round 2 pick. It would more than likely be my favorite destination for him.
I think they're picking like 50 in the 2nd round, something like that.
Draft professors that will take Ian Atchor in round 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ridiculous to take him there. It's just me personally, I would probably wait till around 50-ish to start thinking about Max, but before that, it's not bad.
This is Citadel Zen in the draft professor group chat.
Mm-hmm.
So we can probably do an age check. So Will has October 2003 as the birthday, which would be like 2 years younger, I think, than you guys mentioned. So
yeah. Like I said, we've heard so many different ages thrown out there. Like, people have said he's 22, 23, 24, 25. So like, I don't know. Like, I wish there was like something official. But Will said he's 22.4. So we'll take that.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to be the only way that we would ever personally know how old Max is if he posted a picture of his birth certificate on Twitter or something. Like, that's the only way we're going to know how old he is. And like I said, I don't care how old he is. If he's 22, that's great. If he's 24, he's 24. But no matter how old he is, he's only been playing for 4 years. He needs more time. It's the same story. He could be 20 years old. He could be 27. He just needs more time. And he's a raw prospect regardless of the age. Yeah. So to me, it doesn't matter how old he is. You know what you're going to get. And more than likely, there's a very clear path for him to be a good starting right tackle in the NFL.
Who's your next favorite offensive lineman?
So I'm going to go to a guy that I've been higher on since the summer, Demetrius Crownover from Texas A&M. You talk about guys with the NFL size, NFL measurables to stick on the outside. This is definitely a guy who has it. It is more of a traitsy pick from me. The tape isn't anything crazy out of this world. It's probably day 3. I think there's a good chance he can sneak into round 3, especially with his measurables. I'm trying to get them pulled up right now. But Demetrius Crownover is 6'7", 319 pounds, 35.5-inch arms with an 86-inch wingspan. That just plays in the NFL. And you can't teach a guy how to grow longer limbs, but you can teach him how to play right tackle. So this is a guy who's not going to start day 1. But if he can figure it out, and he had a good Senior Bowl, decent enough to definitely catch some eyes, he could start easily at right tackle in the future. And there were plenty of plays when I was watching his film where he didn't do anything flashy. He didn't completely shut the guy down, but he just did enough to get to the next play. He did enough without allowing a sack. He did enough to not allow that TFL. So it's just a guy who I think his ceiling is going to be like with Ian Atchor, probably a good plus starter in the NFL. There's a world where he's just your average right tackle and he gets paid a good money to play right tackle for a middling team, and that's okay. But I just think that if there's one thing I like with offensive linemen, and I will say offensive lineman is definitely my weakest position group when it comes to scouting by far. But one thing I like is length, because you can't teach a guy length. You can't teach him how to grow longer arms. You can't teach him to have bigger hands. So when it comes to length, there's always something to build off of. And when you have a guy who's for sure going to stick at tackle, I think it's a bit of a premium, especially with the amount of guys nowadays that kick inside. I think Crownover gets a bit of a premium in that sense.
Jordan, how about you? Who's your next favorite offensive lineman that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So for me, this is another late round guy for the offensive tackles. It's Diego Pounds out of Ole Miss. Again, another guy like he's a day 3 guy for me. I just wanted to bring him up. But another guy like Hank said, it's the traits for me. 6'6", 330, 33, almost 34-inch arms, moves really well, great athlete. And I was able to see him go from borderline UDFA coming out of North Carolina in year 2 to transferring to Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in year 3, getting his feet underneath him a little bit. And then year 4, he kind of put it together to where you saw the flashes that you expected when he first came out of high school. So again, I think he can go to the right system. He's probably going to have to sit for a year. He's a developmental guy that can probably be your swing tackle for a year or 2. But again, the traits are there. He's very athletic. When he gets his hands on you, he's not going to let go. Gets out in pulling motions, screen passes, anything like that. He's gonna do well. But I think he's got to go to the right system to be effective. But again, I think he's got all the tools.
Diego Pounds, Paul, yeah. Hank, who is your next favorite offensive lineman that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it at tackle in college. This is definitely a guy who's gonna kick it inside though. Keegan Trost out of Missouri had himself a very good year. A lot of great production from him this year. Played one of the best right tackles in the country. This is a guard in the NFL, just pure measurement standpoints, but it's a guy who I think can make a great transition inside, and I think will be a very, very good starter in the NFL at guard. It's become more of a question now of can we force guys to make this transition inside, especially with Jonas Savaiinaia this last draft. He had a rough go, especially early on in the season. It was very rough for him. And just some guys can't operate inside. They need more space. They can't do it in a telephone booth. But I think Keegan Trost is one of those guys where he's going to be fine. He has the size to kick inside. He's an older prospect. So I would say probably early day 3, maybe day 2. But early day 3 feels right, especially with him being 25 at the start of his rookie year. But his center of gravity is great, low center of gravity, because he has good grip strength. His pad level is great. His bag of techniques that he uses to win is also great. It's just, again, it's an older prospect who's going to kick inside, and his ability to recover is kind of iffy if he gets beat initially. But it's going to be a guy who's going to be a plus starter in the NFL, guard if I had to guess, and he just had himself a very nice year at Missouri.
Keegan Trost as well. I think he might even be slightly higher on Trost than you. But love that Keegan Trost call out from Missouri.
Yeah.
Jordan, who's your next favorite offensive lineman?
So I actually did a little write-up on Twitter today about him. It's Trey Zoom. Again, tackle in college. He's definitely going to move inside at the next level. But again, he's a really smart player. I watched his tape against Miami, and just watching him again against Mesidor and Bain in that playoff game was phenomenal on his part. Because you see those two just wreaking havoc on the other 4 positions, and that was a really good offensive line. We've already talked about Crownover. I'm sure we'll talk about Basantis later as well, but that is a really good offensive line. But Trey Zoom had some left tackle experience, also played center last year as well, and he held his own really well in the Missouri game against that really good defensive line. So the thing that's going to make him push him inside, because he does have great size. He's 6'6", 315. He has a little over 32-inch arms, but what's going to hurt him at the next level if he did play tackle was he does lack the agility on recovering. If a guy beats him on the edge, he's not going to recover as well. He doesn't have the arm length to necessarily reach those guys, so that's why being able to manage A gaps as a center at the next level is going to be really good for him, because he does that quick punch. He has that, and I think that's going to be his biggest strength. Really smart player, 4-year starter at Texas A&M. and he was a captain for the last 2 years. So something that I really appreciate from my centers is, them being smart and kind of being able to command the offensive line, and him having the versatility to play all 5 positions essentially is going to make him so impactful at the next level as a center, in my opinion.
Hey, who's your next favorite offensive lineman?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about Kobe Baines from Kansas. This is another guy that is, a bit lower on the board. No idea where he's going to go. The guy, he really weird situation with his bowl games where I don't think he attended one, but he got invited to the American Bowl. Don't know why. No clue why. But he is, a lot of people like Bryce Foster from Kansas. I think Kobe Baines is by far the best player on the Kansas O-line. Guard 6'4", 315. Just is a good mover in space. He didn't allow a sack. He might have allowed one this past season, but he didn't allow a sack up until this year, I think. And then his re-anchor is great. He latches on. He plays with good leverage. It's just there's something going on behind the scenes that I don't know what it is. Especially with the bowl games not being attended. Like I don't know if he got his offer rescinded, or there's something that we don't know about. But there's something going on in terms of the NFL that isn't liking him as much. But what I saw on tape was a very good starter in the NFL one day. And hopefully that comes into fruition. But up until I have any clue of what's going on with him off the field, then I won't be able to know where he's going to go in the draft. But I know the tape for me is like midday 2. So it's a guy that I really like, but I'm hoping that there's nothing significant happening off the field.
Kobe Baines shout out, because I don't even know that we covered him for scouting reports. So love that shout out here, Hank. So Jordan, who do you have next?
I'm gonna do my bias pick, and that's Brian Parker II. So as a Duke fan, Brian Parker was an excellent right tackle for us, All-American level right tackle for us. That will transition to the interior at the next level, either guard or center. He played both at the Shrine Bowl and did really well, held his own. He actually came to college as a center. He was recruited as a center to Duke, and then ended up playing right tackle because they didn't have any experience there, and he was the best offensive lineman they had in the room. So similar to his former teammate, Graham Barton, he was able to transition and do really well. Played at, like I said, all ACC, All-American level. But he's gonna transition inside because he does suffer a little bit against power rushers along the edge. Even though he has good size at 6'6", 310, 33-inch arms. He does with the bull rushers. He can get hurt and beat really quick off the edge by bull rushers. So that's something he's going to have to work at, because those interior defense linemen are strong too. So he's going to have to work on his anchor a little bit, but really strong. I think he had 29 reps at the combine on the bench press. So, but his lower body is where he's going to have to take the next step for him to be a consistent starter at the next level and be impactful. So I think that's really his biggest downfall right now. It's something that he can definitely work on, because the technique is there. He has quick hands, good punch. And I think he's going to be, for me, he's my center 5 right now. So I'm definitely interested in seeing where he goes.
Inside intel, draft professor special. The Jacksonville Jaguars have heavily scouted Brian Parker from Duke. So if that pick happens in the draft, remember where you heard that. Hank, who's your next favorite offensive lineman?
Yeah, I will say with Brian Parker, and this is just like personal thing, tall centers, just like, I don't know, there's something about them where, I think, in terms of offensive line, like your center should be your shortest guy, guard shouldn't be amazingly tall, and your tackle should be the tallest. That's just personal preference, but a 6'5" center, he's gonna have to learn how to play behind leverage pretty quickly. So it'll be interesting, but I do think he's a good player that should have a decent NFL career. But I will take this to, I mean, there's so many ways I could go. I'm going to talk about Connor Liu, because he's one of the more interesting pieces to talk about, sticking with center. Was the consensus center 1 for most people coming out of the summer. And he was fine enough to start the year. But it just happened that he tore his ACL. and now he missed most of this last season. And I'm hoping it's not going to affect him at all, but it is a serious injury. Tearing your ACL is nothing light. But where does he go in the draft? I have no clue. Probably day 3 with the injury. But this is a guy who maybe could have gotten round 1 hype, in some people's boards and in their analysts analysis. Connor Lew is a very fine center, in my opinion. I just think he needs to play behind better leverage. He needs to be able to anchor quicker. And then he's got to close his chest. One of the things I saw, especially with Connor Lew, was he left his chest too open, I thought, allowed too much contact inside. And that, I think, also played into his ability to anchor and his ability to not collapse the pocket quickly. But his ability to snap the football, have a high IQ, and just have strength when making contact is really, really nice. So I think whoever's getting Connor Lew is going to get him for a very good price on day 3, and he will more than likely be fine. But it's definitely, especially playing offensive line, you always worry about somebody's knees. The ACL tear is definitely a very important thing to keep an eye on.
So love the call out for Connor Lew. So ironically, we covered him with the first offensive line show we did, and he literally tore his ACL the Saturday before we podcasted on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So really unfortunate for him. Now, do you think, Hank, when he tore the ACL, which would have been mid-October, that he can play in 2026?
Yeah, he'll play in 2026 for sure. It might not be right away. He might miss, preseason because just being, cautious with his knee. I mean, we've seen, torn ACLs knock out Jamar McCoy for way too long. And, now there's questions with his ACL injury and how bad it is. But, I would be shocked if he was out more than like week 5 of next season. That's being like extra cautious. But it wouldn't shock me at all if he was week 1 ready to go, possibly even ready for the preseason. But he should take as much time as he needs to heal from this injury, because it's not something you want to joke around with playing on the offensive line.
Jordan, who's your next offensive lineman?
So I'll stay with the centers, and I'll go with Jake Slaughter out of Florida. Pretty good athlete at Florida. He's somebody that I think he would prefer to go to a zone scheme instead of a gap scheme, just because he does have the tendency to get stonewalled a little bit when driving against power. He can reach. He's got great athleticism, or good athleticism, like I said earlier, to be able to reach guys in a gap scheme. I mean, in a zone scheme. He does need to work on his anchor a little bit too. Let's see what else with Jake Slaughter. He is a bit taller, Hank. So he's 6'5" as well, 310. And that's something I've noticed with this center class is a lot of these guys are 6'5" plus, and it's like I'm used to the centers being 6'2", 6'3", and I'll talk about my center one in a little bit. But yeah, Jake Slaughter, another guy that he's going to have a good career. I don't know if he's going to be an elite center. But the point to go back to Connor Lew real quick, yeah, I think Connor Lew, for me, he was center 1. He was getting like late first round hype for me early in the offseason and going into the season, because I viewed him in the same breath as Jackson Powers Johnson a couple years back out of Oregon. So pretty high praise, and I hope he is able to recover, because he did tear his ACL. What was it, October of last year? So yeah, I wouldn't rush him back. I think if a team has a center already in place that might be a little bit older, they're looking to get off of in the next year or two, that's somebody that could definitely take a flyer on him.
Jake Slaughter and Connor Lew, center only, or do you think they can play guard, Jordan?
I have them both as center only. Yeah, those two.
Okay. Who's the next offensive lineman that you have?
Yeah. Also, I think maybe there's just not a lot of instances where usually when you move a guy around, you move him closer inside. Tackle to guard, possibly tackle to center, guard to center. There's not a lot of instances where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this guard and I'm going to move him to right guard, left guard. Or I'm going to take the center, move him to guard. Take the center, move him to right tackle. So I think once you work your way all the way in the middle of the offensive line, you've just kind of conceded your career to the center. I want to talk about Caden Proctor, though. This is a guy who generates a lot of different opinions. My opinion is a developmental day 2 pick that I think will not be able to operate as a guard. So I think you have to let him fail at tackle. I think he's too big to play guard. I don't think he'll be able to operate inside a confined area as well as people think. This is a very tall, very big guard that, it would stand out massively on someone's offensive line. And the reason that I just think he has to fail at tackle is because you don't get a guy of this size with his athleticism that often that plays left tackle that you're like, okay, you're not good enough, so now you got to play guard. This is a guy that you have to develop. You just have to develop him. And I just don't trust a guy this large who I don't think can operate in a confined space to go inside. It all started showing the last 3 weeks of the 2024 season with Caden Proctor. It was a rough 3-game stretch, and then it kind of carried into the next season. So the question is going to be is how he's going to handle NFL competition after not being able to handle college competition at an elite level. And everyone was kind of expecting him to be able to handle it at an elite level because, again, everyone just looks at his size and just thinks, okay, this is a guy that should be dominating week in, week out. But at the end of the day, you're getting kind of a mediocre guy who has very good traits. And that's why I think he's a day 2 developmental piece. There's been a lot of talk about him going, mid round 1, late round 1. It wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't like it, but it wouldn't shock me. Again, you got to let him fail at tackle because he's not even 21 yet, I don't think. The arm length is a bit of a concern, but tall guards, especially guards that are 6'7", 350 plus pounds, it's just a lot to ask him to play in between 2 other offensive linemen. So it's a guy that I think personally will be able to figure out. I like the idea of Caden Proctor figuring it out in the NFL, but right away, definitely not. Maybe 3 years down the road, possibly. But in terms of getting a day 1 starter with Caden Proctor, definitely not. But if you see him as a guard, there's an argument he could be a day 1 starter, but I just don't see him as a guard.
You have another offensive lineman for us.
Yeah, my center 1 is Logan Jones out of Iowa. 6'3", 305 pounds. I think it was. He was on number 7 on Dane Brugler's freaks list. So he's an amazing athlete, former basketball player, state champion in wrestling. He's just a freak athlete. Like I said, he's on the freak list. So obviously he is. I think he had like a 490 power clean. Got up to 20 plus miles per hour on the. So he's just one of those guys that when you think about a center, that's what you're looking for. Like you see it on film, he's constantly reaching guys, he's constantly driving guys back, reaches the second level at an alarming rate for the opposing defenses. Yeah, I think for me, I gravitated towards him as I'm watching Jennings Dunker film. And I was like, this center is so good at what he does. Like he was never getting beat. I think through his first 3 years in college, he had never given up a sack, which is insane. In the Big Ten, defensive linemen are, a constant for them. So, he was the sounding board for Iowa's offense. And I know we don't really think of Iowa's offense as a juggernaut or anything like that, but they were so consistent in what they did, and they did what they wanted to do at a really good level. So, they were never going to go out there and score 40 points tonight. But for me, it was just watching him in the run game, in the pass game, always being able to stand up and take on guys regardless of size. I think like I said, he's 6'3", 300 pounds. So he wasn't like the biggest guy on the field, but he was the strongest, sometimes the most athletic, depending on who he was playing against. And like I said, the basketball background allows his feet to be able to move at a really good rate. So for me, like I said, he's center 1 and just a center, not a guard or anything like that. Yeah, I'm super high on Logan Jones.
I love the Logan Jones call out. We have been talking about Logan Jones on this channel for the better part of 2 years. So Clint Goss absolutely loves Logan Jones. Jerry Ostrowski loves him. So offensive linemen, there are definitely a lot of Iowa offensive linemen to like, and Logan Jones is at the top of that list.
Mm-hmm.
Hank, You have another offensive lineman for us.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the comment that someone had about if Proctor loses weight, will it be the same amount like a force? Uh, I just personally don't think he was a force already. I don't think he had force. I think he had an awful anchor, and I think losing weight is the best course of action because he's just too big. So that's my personal take on it. I don't think he showed enough force to, justify the size and the weight that he was at. I think 6'7", 330, 330-ish is where he should be playing at. That's a lot of weight to ask him to drop. But if you're not going to be a force at 370, then there's no reason to be a force. If you're not going to be 370 pounds and throw people around, there's no reason to be 370 pounds. So that's my personal take on Caden Proctor and his weight dropping. But the next offensive lineman I'll talk about is actually a guy I want to get Jordan's opinion on before I talk about him. I don't know where you have Jennings Dunker.
Mhm.
I have been very low on Jennings Dunker since the summer, like low, like UDFA low, like he's bottom 5 on my board right now. I'm just not a Jennings Dunker fan. So I don't know where you have him, but if you could tell me what you see in Dunker or, where you see him going in the draft or where you have him and why, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I have a day 3 grade on Jennings Dunker. Let me pull up my board real quick. So I don't think he's a tackle at the next level. Obviously, I moved him to guard, so that drops him a little bit lower. I mean, he has the measurables to be a right tackle. I don't think he has the power, even though he has the size. He's not a great athlete at the next level. I've struggled with moving him up, moving him down, because I don't like his hand placement. He can get beat really quickly, and he doesn't recover well. He has heavy feet, and I saw it. I saw it on the tape, but it was in the drills at the combine, and I was like, this dude really does have like heavy feet, heavy legs, and is something that after like 3 or 4 years, I wanted him to get better. Because all of his main struggles, to me, are glaring things that I do not want to see from my offensive lineman at the next level. Inconsistent pad level, heavy legs, doesn't have a good anchor, gets beat to the outside. So great hair. And that, like I said, when I was watching his tape, I would get so like turned off by his reps that I'm just gravitating towards Bo Stevens and Logan Jones. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like this guy's not he's not even a tackle at this level. And I don't want to sound like I'm just like crapping on Jennings Dunker because he does have some positive traits. But for me, I think a lot of people are talking, round 2 and then round 3, and I'm like, it's a little rich for me. So like if he's there at in the 4th round for me and I need a guard, sure, but I don't think he's a day 1 starter either. I think he's a developmental guard. So a developmental guard in the 4th round is very early, So he's definitely a day 3 guy. Where you take him in day 3, that's really up to you. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. When I saw he had 34-inch arms, I about had a heart attack because I went the whole summer and all of the football season thinking he had 32-inch arms. So when I saw 34, I was like, oh my goodness, the Jennings Dunker agenda is back on. I'm gonna have to hear it for another few months. But it's just when I watched the 2024 Ohio State game over the summer, that was just rough. It was a rough game. I think within the first 10 plays, he had already gotten beat bad 3 times, and that's NFL talent. Those are guys that are going to play on Sundays. Whether it's Caden Curry, who doesn't really have the measurables and will be probably a UDFA late day 3 guy, or Kenyatta Jackson, who's going back to school, who could push maybe round 1 next year. We'll see how, what steps he takes. Those are real NFL edge rushers, and Jennings Dunker just couldn't hang with them. And, he, like you said, the recovery really scares me, and the moving in space really just isn't for me. I would be shocked if he went before pick 60. It would really, turn me off if he did for any team that takes him. Whether guard is your biggest need, I promise you, your GM can DM me and I can give you at least 10 that are better. That can help you out. So I don't know. I want Jennings Dunker to be good because he has great hair and he's probably a great personality. He's from Illinois. I'm from Illinois, but it's just when I turn on the tape, it's just I can't see it. And like you said, I found myself gravitating more towards Logan Jones too, because I think Logan Jones is a fun center and he's going to be a good center in the NFL.
Mhm.
Get tease us like that. Give us the 10 guards you have higher than Jennings Dunker.
Okay. I can pull that up here. Okay. The problem is right now I have my guards and centers all mixed up. So Pregnon, Vega Ione for sure, like miles ahead. Basantis for sure. And then as we counting guys that I think are gonna move inside, we're gonna count sure. Okay, Maui Noah, Fano. If he plays guard, he could play center, but I think guard is realistic. I think center would just be fun. Um, Billy Shrouth from Notre Dame, Keegan Trost, Bo Stevens, Jalen Farmer, Keelan Rutledge, JC Davis, Caleb Tiernan, Cage Casey, Carver Willis, Inez Cooper, and I think that might be it. If I've watched, I might have a bit more, but
List. And
Jaden Roberts is another guy that I
there
really
we
like.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and the entire purpose of this podcast is to introduce people that are relatively new to the draft space about a bunch of offensive linemen that you are going to hear their name called in rounds 1 through 7. So Hank just gave you like that's only 25% of the offensive linemen that are going to be drafted.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think Hank's list was like 12, and about 48 or 60 are going to get drafted. So, okay. I don't even remember where we were floating between Jordan and Hank. So, Jordan, do you have another offensive lineman for us?
Well, so the same with me and Jennings Dunker for Hank. Can you give me the positives you have on Caleb Tiernan? Because I don't have any. And for me, when you're 6'8" and you have 32-inch arms, I'm like, what do I do with that? Now I get a great athlete, moves well in space, but what else? Because I'm seeing round 2 talks and I don't see it. I don't buy it.
Yeah, this is a guy over the summer, ridiculous amounts of hype. Just he was OT1 for guys like Newt. Hail Mary Sports had him OT1. This is a guy that everyone thought was elite. By the end of the day, when you're 6'8", 6'7", and you have very short arms, that build and the way it translates to the NFL isn't great. And it never has been great. The historical data has been great. I just think that Tiernan is going to be he's definitely going to play guard. I can't see him sticking at tackle.
Yeah.
It's just, can he make it work as a taller guy? Maybe. I hated on Caden Proctor's move earlier to make the move inside being so tall. I feel the same about Tiernan, except I think Tiernan was just a better left tackle in college.
Mhm.
Maybe not by much, but he has more experience being a 4-year starter, good athlete, better than Proctor in my opinion. But when Proctor drops weight, that might change. But Tiernan is just, I like him now. I was high on him over the summer because I was like, okay, there's hype. If he can, play really well this year and he can show everyone why he deserves to stick at left tackle and that the arm length doesn't matter and he can just be dominant, then sure. But he wasn't really dominant and he was fine. Nothing really, like, there was nothing glaring to me that like really stuck out. Like, oh my gosh, this is like a major red flag. NFL teams are gonna eat this up alive. But he wasn't, amazingly good to where I felt comfortable keeping at left tackle. So it's going to be a guy who's going to be a major outlier at guard that's got to figure it out. But I just think that he played better than some of the taller guards that are going to transition inside, to where I feel more confident about Tiernan going inside.
To build on that, so we've been doing Tuesday night, we do a Buffalo Bills podcast, right? And Buffalo needs a starting guard. Buffalo also has Dion Dawkins, who is, I believe, 32 years old right now.
Yeah.
So, like, Jerry Ostrowski and Owen and Randall are like, well, we could draft Tiernan. He could play guard now. And we don't know if he could replace Dion Dawkins, but it's nice if you have a guy who is a guard who has started for you that you would consider kicking out to tackle if Dion Dawkins, either his play deteriorated or his age just catches up with him. So I think there's a lot of people that are seeing Tiernan as a guard, but they're not ruling out tackle either.
It's not really a guy like Maui Noah, I think, has earned the right to fail at tackle. before he gets kicked inside, like Will Campbell. Will Campbell is good enough at LSU to where he needs to fail at left tackle before he gets kicked inside, or else just kind of disrespectful to the season he had. But for Tiernan, it's a guy where he's the complete opposite. He gets kicked inside, and if you absolutely desperately need a left tackle for a game, he can do it. So, it's not going to be like disrespect his game, anything kicking him inside. And Buffalo wouldn't be a bad spot at all for him. Deion Dawkins, of course, now he's like 31, 32 years old. So he's getting up there. Who knows what the future with him in Buffalo is. But getting a guy like Tiernan, who could possibly be the future left tackle, but for sure a future guard, I like the fit.
Yeah, it's almost like when the Panthers drafted Brady Christensen out of BYU, who was a left tackle, a really good left tackle in college. He just had 32-inch arms. And everybody was like, I think Matt Rule was one of the first people that I remember saying, well, if a tackle has sub 33-inch arms, he's not going to be good at the next level. And that's why we passed on Rashawn Slater that year. Brady Christensen, again, I think he's a great center, great guard for us. He just can't stay healthy. If you want to put him in like spots where he can play left tackle for a game or two, I think he can do that. I just don't think he's a permanent fixture at that position, and that's how I feel about Caleb Tiernan.
Yeah, like if you get a guy like Caleb Lomu to Utah and you kick him inside, it's not a guy who you feel like desperate about moving to left tackle. He's a guy who can play left tackle. I just feel kind of less confident in a guy like Lomu than Tiernan, which is why Lomu is much higher on my board than Tiernan currently.
Yeah. Who's your next offensive lineman for us?
Yeah, I'll talk about another guy who just has great traits. Blake Miller out of Clemson. This is a guy who I was very low on in the summer. Just didn't have a great year, in my opinion. The Texas game from 2024 was very rough for him. But then he comes out this year and he kind of just plays better. Like he just is a better player all around. The anchor problems are gone. And, it's just not like he has this out of this world anchor, but all of a sudden he has a decent enough anchor to where he can play on Sundays. And this is another guy, 35-inch arms. Yeah, 35-inch arms, 84-ish inch wingspan. Smaller hands, though, which does kind of hurt, but he has the arm length and he has the especially the athleticism. This is another guy who is a great athlete, great mover in space. Don't think he's quite like elite. I think the elite athletes, it really just is Monroe Freeling, in my opinion. I think that he's just like a different level of athlete. Maybe like Jaden Roberts or Trey Zune's also another very good athlete. But in terms of just like overall, players, it would just come down to him for me being the next, like a decent enough NFL player, I guess, at the next level. I just think Blake Miller, he needs to be able to absorb contact better. This is another thing like I'm learning to watch for, especially when it comes for offensive linemen, is how do you absorb contact? Because in NFL, guys want to run through your chest. Guys want to, make a fool of you. They want to put you in the dirt every play. Blake Miller is a guy who has to be able to absorb contact. He just figured out this anchor this past year, so he's going to have to be way better at it in the NFL. He's going to have to take another step up, which might be kind of crazy for him, of an ask for him. Asking guys to be developed over the span of 3-4 years is, a big ask to, take steps in every aspect of their game every single year. It's tough to do. And that's why so little people make it to the NFL. And Blake Miller just took this step with an anchor, and it was a big step. Does he have 2 more big steps left in his anchor? Probably not. So it's going to be a guy who might even bite the bullet and go inside one day just because of the anchor issues, but he showed enough to where I feel like it's the same as Maui Noah. You earned the right, in my opinion, to fail at tackle before you get kicked inside. It wouldn't shock me if he went early day 2 just because of the athletic traits and the arm length traits that he has. And I kind of like him, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement with Blake Miller.
Okay. Jordan, you have another offensive lineman for us.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my guard 3, and that's Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. Really good athlete, good size outside of the arm length. I think that's his only real knock. I think that's all my weaknesses are from his arm length, where he doesn't have the wingspan to, reach guys if they get the jump off of him, which they hardly ever do because he does have the initial quickness. And when he gets his hands on you, he doesn't let go. He continues to drive his feet. He's able to reach guys. He pulls really well, reaches the next level at a high rate. I think I saw it a lot. Like I said, with that offensive line, they just move so cohesively together. There was 4 NFL starters on that Texas A&M offensive line, and he was probably the best one. You could say it was Zune, it was Cronover, it was him. For me, it was Basantis. But like I said, his biggest weakness, is just his arms. He has 31.5-inch arms, so doesn't have great arm length. He tends to lean in to blockers instead of staying back a little bit because of the arm length. Guys can, if they get the swim on him, it's night. So I think those are obviously big things. But I think, like I said, with the right system, with the right coach, they can be cleaned up. I just like his upside.
Chase Basantis, I've definitely heard he's on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
So Jerry Ostrowski and Owen both have Basantis as interior offensive lineman 1. Even ahead, like Jerry loves Vega Ioane from Penn State. Like that's his favorite player.
Yeah.
But Basantis is the higher graded player. So it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people have Pregnon or Ioane as their interior offensive lineman 1. I'm not hearing a lot of Basantis as interior offensive lineman 1 side of those 2 individuals. But like they're saying Basantis first round grade, he's an immediate starter type thing. So Hank, do you see Basantis as an immediate starter?
Immediate starter, yeah, but I think there's a clear teardrop when you talk about the top 2 guys. I nowhere near interior 1 for me, but he's kind of safely interior 3. There just is kind of a bit of a teardrop for me there. I think Pregnon and Ioane are both sick players. I think Pregnon is one of the best guards I've watched, just strictly based on this year's film. I've only been scouting 3-4 years, but Pregnon's tape this year was so close to being elite. And Vega Ioane was amazing at Penn State. But then after that, it really just becomes who you want. And if you really like Basantis, round 2, I'm happy with it. Length is a question. It's just, I also think his IQ is a little shaky, especially as picking up players, picking up stunts, picking up interesting defensive packages that defensive coordinators scheme up. But he's also just good at guard for 85% of the game. So that's kind of just what you need. You need guys going to go out there and be good for more than a majority of an NFL game. And I think Basantis gives you that. And I think day 2, probably in the top 50 is where he goes, realistic on draft night. But, round 2, I don't think he makes that a round 2 for an NFL team. But I will just jump in to my next guy. My next guy I actually want to talk about is 2 guys that I haven't watched yet because I always do offensive linemen last. I always save them for last because I know I'm not going to enjoy my time watching them. I don't know what it is. I've never had fun watching offensive linemen. It's weird because a lot of people love watching offensive linemen. It's just never been my thing. Give me the wide receivers and the corners and the safeties, and I'm more than happy. But Sam Hecht and Matt Golban are 2 guys who have been charging up center boards recently. Yeah. And from what I've seen cut-ups on Twitter. Both of them look very good. And what I've seen out of Golban especially, I really like. But 2 guys that I definitely need to watch. So I'll just kick it to Jordan. If you've watched either of these 2, where do you have them? What do you see with them? And what should I expect when I watch them?
So I haven't watched Golban. Like I said, for me, I think Jim's the one who brought him up to me on our first initial sit down. And then for me, Sam Hecht, I have watched his film. I think, where do I have him ranked at? I have Sam Hecht as my center 4 right now, and he could jump Slaughter. So we'll see. But for Sam Hecht, out of Kansas State, let me pull up his measurables real quick.
I have 6'4", 303, 32-inch arms.
Okay, so yeah, he has nice size for a center. Not the greatest athlete. I think he's a smarter player than he is like a great athlete. So his core strength is like really something. His anchor is probably the most powerful aspect of his game right now. Um, he's a great pass blocker. I think the game that I watched with him, because I wanted to see, like, not really knowing a whole lot about him with centers, I want to see what they look like against NFL talent. So I was like, I'm turning on the Lee Hunter tape, right? And Lee Hunter to me is one of the strongest, best defensive tackles in this class. Obviously, he held his own against Lee Hunter all day. Like, I think Lee Hunter probably won. He won a few reps. Like, I wouldn't say he just got stonewalled all day, but Sam Hank won that. I'd probably say it was 65-35 for the day, for me. And that was so impressive, because he's, like I said, his core strength and his anchor was so powerful against somebody like a Lee Hunter, who is known for his power, known for his agility. He was able to move his feet side to side. And like I said, he's not the best athlete. He's a good athlete, good enough to be an NFL starter. I think he's going to come in, start day one. He's probably going to have, 5+ year career with a team. He doesn't get too wide on his pass protection, which I also like. I think he could get stronger. I think if anything, if I could be bullish on him about anything, I think he could be a little bit stronger, and be quicker with his hands, as far as like the initial punch.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, he's center four right now. I want to see more of his tape. I've watched Slaughter, I've watched Lou, and I've watched Logan Jones extensively. So those are my top three. I'm getting to the point. I think I've watched 2 games of Sam Haight right now. Want to watch the third one, and if he has another good game like I've seen with his first 2, he'll jump to center 3, and he could jump to center 2 because of Lou's injury. So
Kenny, this is an interesting question. The reason why I say it's an interesting question is because I think we did a center only episode where we only talked about centers. But one of the issues with centers is you can't do a top 10 center board because on average, it's only like 6 or 7 centers get drafted, right? So if we talk about top 10 centers, I think Brailsford and Coogan are on it. The challenge would be there's a line there where, like, if you're like center 7, you're probably not getting drafted. Like this year, maybe you do because it's a stronger center class.
Mm-hmm.
But like and then that's also one of the things I wanted to point out about Matt Gulbin. So Matt Gulbin, center board, he might be center 6, but Matt Gulbin has also started games in the Big Ten at both guard spots. So he's played and started games at all 3 interior spots, which is part of what makes him more valuable than some of the center only prospects. Because if you need interior offensive line, Gulbin might give you a better floor, even if one of the centers might give you a higher ceiling, just because you can use Gulbin at more than one spot on your line. We're definitely pushing the amount of time, and there are so many other players that we could mention. We've only dropped the Kentucky players' names, but there's 3 Kentucky interior offensive linemen in this draft who are probably going to go day 3, and one might creep into day 2, like Jalen Farmer, Joshua Braun, Jaeger Burton,
yeah,
I believe.
yeah, Jaeger Burton. It's a
Do
center.
you guys want to drop any more names that you think people may hear on draft day before we kind of do our closeout for the podcast?
Yeah, I can start with that. Just a few more names. I still think there's a chance Isaiah World gets drafted even with the injury. I think some team is still really going to love him. Definitely no higher than round 5 though. This is a guy you spend a 7th round pick on, and you hope that he turns out with the injury. He just had a rough year at Oregon this year, but he was great at Nevada. There's definitely something to build off there. But when his measurables came back and he was 3 inches shorter than he was supposed to be, that was a bit alarming. Another guy I want to drop is definitely Emil Wagner at Notre Dame. Skinnier guy, but a guy who has been able to play with that weight. He needs to add weight though. I want to say, he played around 290, same as Lomu. Definitely got to get up to near 310 in order to stick in the NFL and deal with the power. And then JC Davis out of Illinois, another guy probably going to kick inside, but he's been rock solid for Illinois for the past couple of seasons, and I really like his projection at guard as well. And then in terms of interior guys, I will mention Brailsford because I watched him for a while at Washington. Another skinnier guy. He needed to show his athleticism during his testing, and he did. Sadly, his agility testing was kind of lackluster, but his 10-yard split in the 40 was great. And being 6'2", 290-ish, he probably needs to add 10-ish pounds of muscle mass onto his build in order to stick in the NFL. And then that's pretty much it. The rest of the guys that you're going to get are probably just day 3 filler camp bodies. Of course, there's still the top guys. I mean, like Vega Ione. If you haven't watched him for some reason, go watch him. And then, of course, we didn't really, shine a light on Maui Noah, but that's because I'm sure everybody, knows about Maui Noah by now. So, just definitely the top guys. It's definitely, I think, top heavy is the best way to describe this class of offensive linemen. There's going to be some really good names going early, and early means like through day 2. But once you get to day 3, it's going to be a lot more filler. It's going to be a lot more camp bodies, and we'll see if any of those guys can carve out a role in the NFL.
Jordan, any more names you want to drop?
Yeah, one guy, I have a hot and cold relationship with him. Watching his tape, Austin Barber out of Florida. I think he's a decent left tackle. I think he could push into guard potentially at the next level. Developmental guy. Cage Casey, I know we mentioned him earlier. I don't know if some people view him as a guard, some people view him as a tackle. Drew Shelton out of Penn State. Again, another guy, I think he is an excellent pass blocker, struggles really against the run game. Jude Bowery out of Boston College, smart player, really good movement skills. I think he struggled a lot at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. And then I'll shine light on one guy that a friend of mine did an interview with at the Senior Bowl, Delby Lemieux, who is out of Dartmouth. So he's a tackle. He's smaller. He's gonna push into center at the next level. I don't know if he gets drafted. If he does get drafted, it'll be in the 7th round. But just because it's like I said, I think Dartmouth has never had a player drafted in the NFL. I could be wrong about that, but he's a guy who's super smart. He knows his weaknesses. He was able to identify those coming into this year, and I think being a former lacrosse player at Dartmouth and then transitioning to like competing for the NFL. Is remarkable, and it also shows he's a really good athlete. So him being as a center, I think he's got pretty good size, 6'5", 305. Somebody that I would watch potentially as a UDFA as well.
Yeah. I will say Dartmouth had one that I can think of. Casey Kramer got drafted by the Buccaneers in 2004. I don't know why I know that, but I know that. I'm sure there's probably more because back in the day, I'm sure we were talking like 1960.
Yeah,
Dartmouth probably had a few, but that's the only recent one I can think of. And then there is one more name. This is not for this year, but next year. I'm a big Anthony Donko fan. I think he's a stud. That'll be for next season. He's going back to Penn State. He has an injury right now, but I really like the tape that he put on, and I thought he was pretty decent throughout the season in a rough Penn State situation. So it's another guy next year that I'm excited to talk about, push his agenda along with Santana Hopper to the moon.
You'll be hearing all about summer scouting starting the first week of May.
Yeah.
So literally we just flick a switch. Once this draft happens, we go back to doing what we do, and we will be covering the top 800 players in college football by July 4th. So you'll hear all on this podcast channel. You'll see Jordan, you'll see Hank, your favorite draft professors diving in to the next several draft classes. But why don't we pause, do some podcaster introductions? Jordan, you want to let Kenny know and everybody else watching know who you are and how they can find all of your other content?
Yeah, so Jordan Hunt, Panthers Pulse on Twitter. Like I said, I'm a big Panthers fan, obviously by the name. Talk, NFL draft content, NFL free agency content, and the season goes on. I'm engaging with, rival fan bases about the draft. I have Buccaneers fans in my DM saying, hey, you guys should draft this player. And it's somebody that I have 250th on my board. So, but yeah, I just have a good time talking about football in general. So I love it. It's something I've been doing on my own for the last 10 years, and as the last 2 years doing it, in a semi-professional manner. So yeah, if you want to talk sports, you want to talk football, I'm your guy.
Yeah, so you can find all my stuff at Hank Knows Ball on Twitter. That's really about it. Yeah, there'll be a Substack as well under Hank Knows Ball. Don't know how much you're gonna get on that. School is school, so gotta keep up with that. Just finished up midterms, had a week off to kind of rejuvenate the battery of scouting, and I'm hoping before the end of March, whether that's the last day of March or the last minute of March, the big board will be done. And I can move on to 2027 and start watching some of those guys and put Santana Hopper top 10 on my board finally, officially for good. So that's what we're moving on to. We're looking towards the future, but got to finish up 2027, specifically, literally just the offensive linemen. There's so many offensive linemen I have to watch. So it's going to be a haul for the next 2-ish weeks getting through them.
Say thank you to Jordan and Hank for helping put this podcast together. We can't do this at Draft Professor without Hank and Jordan, so please give them a follow. I also would like to remind everybody watching that Epic Mock 26 is April 9th, 10th, and 11th. So that's 32 podcasters doing a 7-round mock draft against each other. You'll be able to find all those podcasters on their own feed. You'll also see a Draft Professor feed. You'll see Hank and I covering that with a few other draft professors on this channel. And you'll see several others. So, like, for example, Kenny, we have a 49ers podcaster who's going to have a 49ers war room, and you can bounce between that 49ers content creator and then hearing Hank and I comment on the 49ers picks after they make it. So there will be a lot of podcasts going on all at the same time. We did it last year. It's a blast. And there's really no other station that does anything like it. We're also going to be doing a preview. So March 30th, which is a Monday, we're going to start something called the Marathon Mock. So that means that Jordan and Hank are going to do round 1. And then if you watch the Tuesday podcast, they're going to do round 2. And then if you watch the Wednesday podcast, the early one will do round 3. The late one will do round 4. And we're just going to take the mock all the way through the week. So we're calling that a Marathon Mock. That will start March 30th. And again, that should be a lot of fun because we get to hear, who Hank and Jordan have at the top of their draft boards. And then we'll get to hear the other draft professors mocking them for how could those guys not get out of round 1. Those types of things. So it should be a lot of fun with a lot of banter between the draft professors going from podcast to podcast. So it should be a lot of fun. For Jordan, Hank, myself, the 85 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Monday night. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow.